That's right. It's time. It's time to talk about the Raven Guard, everybody. And for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. So let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for some legions. So I'm going to do a card by card here. The Raven Guard, who... Hang on, get this thing out of here. Get it out of here. There it is. Better. All right, better image. Here we go. So the Raven Guard, the third faction and last faction to come out of the Istvan 5 expansion, emerged pretty hot out the gate. Some great abilities, some great breakthrough stuff. Let's open up this free crate while we're here. Okay, I like it. They're thrive on stealth, thrive from attacking and hitting and fading, striking from the shadows. Basically, is what they do. I do all cards, but this is the first and only Legion I currently have all cards for. Actually, no, I take that back. I believe I picked them up for the Salamanders too. So that is all cards for this Legion. So I had a lot of fun, and I still am having fun with the Raven Guard. The Raven Guard are a very solid, well put together faction. There is some initial complaints and feedback in terms of people feeling that they were overpowered, that they were just ridiculous and unbelievable, and really there's so many answers. Like some of the things that I've talked about in my previous card by card videos, there's a lot of things that answer the Raven Guard whether you're choosing to directly prepare for them, or you're just including them because they're decent cards and they have a secondary benefit. They're not broken. There's a lot of games with the Raven Guard that come down to the wire, down to the last turn, and you can say that with just about any Legion. They have the ability to hide from battle a little bit more, but they're still susceptible to many effects that take place throughout the game. So they're not overpowered. I think they've suffered several nerfs, and some of them I will agree with a couple of the nerfs, and some of the nerfs that took place presently in the current state that they're in, I don't fully agree with. I don't think they did the right thing to do with how they changed those cards. So that does, we'll see how that progresses, if they keep it the same way or not. But the Raven Guard are a very good faction. If you're looking for a faction that plays similar to the Emperor's Children in terms of rewarding kind of a puzzle-like play, if you set up your combos right and you time your stuff right, you can reap the benefits and snatch victory when your opponent doesn't expect it. This is what the Raven Guard is. That's their style. That's their play. A lot of their decks can come from behind and just have massive either burst of energy or quick succession, basically you didn't see this coming, or you knew it was coming, you were hoping it wouldn't come type effects that can win the game. They're not straightforward. They're not brutal in your face like the World Eaters. They're not an attrition game like the Death Guard or the Iron Hands, or now the Iron Warriors, which is new to the fold, and we'll have to delve into them sometime down the road. They are very precision deck, and I think they are, you could almost argue some of their builds are control style, which is hard to say in this game, but I think in terms of elements, in terms of controlling the pacing and having your opponent react to you, the Raven Guard are probably up there to the tops. So let's take a look at their warlords. Let's take a look and see what they've got. So first off, Agapito Nev. Now, Nev got a lot of fire for what he does. He's a 235. He's an epic warlord. He's got a 2 energy, deal 2 damage. In addition, if target is sentenced, draw a card. So let's talk about sentenced really first, because that is the primary mechanic that is exclusive to the Raven Guard. Sentenced is an effect that you can put on a card, a unit, and for, let's say it's sentenced to 1, for every time that unit takes damage, it takes an additional 1 damage. If it takes 1 damage from an attack, it takes 1 damage. If it takes another attack, it takes another damage. So you could stack up and massively capitalize with damage ramps. If it's sentenced 2 or sentenced 3, it takes an attack, it takes an additional 3 damage. Sentenced gets past survivor. Sentenced, what else can it work on? Trying to think. As far as in terms of timing, how it works, it's not like a destruction. It is an additional damage effect, so it does trigger rages. It does trigger those responses from rages, and it times a little bit differently. I think that's about it. I mean, getting past survivor is actually kind of big when you think about it, but it's big. So Agapito Nev. So what he does is he does the exact same thing as Loken, your starting warlord, your entry to the game, and he has 5 extra hit points. And then in addition, he has the potential to draw a card. And a lot of people cried foul about that, and they still kind of do every now and then, occasionally on some of the forums or the Discord chat, they'll cry foul about it. And here's the reality: Loken is your starting warlord, and he's your starting warlord. He's fixed. You're gonna get him. He's a guaranteed. Agapito Nev is an epic rare. That's your difference. That's why he's better. He's in a different legion, and he has a different rarity, and that's why he's better. And that should be a sufficient enough excuse. Now, I don't play Nev. Nev is easy. I mean, you build it just throwing a bunch of sentenced cards, and as you'll see, there are a ton of cards that put on sentenced, as well as can play with sentenced. It's not hard to build an Agapito Nev deck. He came under a lot of fire for that reason, and then in addition, his initiative initially was high, so he had first turn of the game, and a lot of people didn't see that as fair, and that may or may not be true, because at the time there were some other cards that hadn't been changed, which allowed for some pretty high swings of damage. Those cards have since been changed, and he has since been changed, and now his initiative is a medium. His effect and his ability is still the same. He is a good warlord. He's a good entry warlord for the Raven Guard card pool. If you see him and you're interested, and you feel like you've got enough Raven Guard cards to try it out, pick up Agapito Nev. You will not be disappointed. He does card draw, he does direct damage, and he ties in with a heavy mechanic that they already got. And I actually like the art too. I like that this is armor that goes prior to the Corvus armor, which is the beakies, as they call them. Your like this guy here. We're just taking a quick look at the artwork here. This armor, they call it the Corvus pattern armor, because it was first introduced and assigned to the Raven Guard upon those who survived the Isfahan massacre. Basically, it was the new mark, and they received it, and they got the beaks, and it kind of was named after Corvus Corax. And just a little fluff lesson for you if you didn't already know that. So Corvus Corax, the Primarch. Oh man, I'll tell you, I pulled this guy from an event crate, and I was so happy. Between him and Fulgrim, I don't know which one I was happier with, and I don't have all the Primarchs. I've only got 3, but he's probably the one that I enjoyed the most. I still enjoy Fulgrim a ton, as you've seen in my video, and I would like to do one with Corax, but Corax, his ability hasn't changed. He is what he is. He's a 240. He is unstoppable. He was the first Primarch. He won't be the last, but he's the first Primarch that is unstoppable, and that makes a huge, huge difference. Doesn't matter if you've got frontline. He can get over it. He can do his attack, and sometimes that's all that matters. That's super important. In addition, his ability is 2 energy. He deals 1 damage to an enemy, and if the target dies, he gains stealth until your next turn. That is huge. He strikes from the shadows. He has the natural ability to hide himself, and that is represented into his card. And throughout the health of the cards of the game, that's not too difficult to set up a damage and then use his ability as a second damage and stealth. And almost, especially if your opponent is foolish enough to put down like a 1 health unit or a an infinite, like the militia, the Farron's militia card, and they just let that perpetually spawn, you can stealth the entire game, just for 2 energy, just stealth. That's you're not going to be able to get face striked. Only random damage is going to hit you, unless your opponent has something that breaks stealth. I highly dissuade people from playing Farron's Militia against Korax. It can be done. It's not recommended to be done. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Great Warlord. So what is his Reckoning? Let's take a look at his Reckoning. His Reckoning ability, and this is interesting, is he becomes -1 cost when you control no troops at the start of your turn, and that's a 20 cost Reckoning. So at the start of your first turn, it's going to be 19 cost because it's going to count your first turn. So by turn 10, it should be cost 10. Now, I believe his Reckoning used to be 18, and that's been changed. How it triggers has not been changed, but the cost has been changed. And when he changes, his ability changes. His attack does not go up. He is currently the only Primarch who, when they trigger their Reckoning or their Whispers, his attack does not increase. I don't know if that'll change or not. We'll see. But his ability then goes from the deal 1 damage and stealth to 2 energy, add target gains sentenced 1. So for if you have reckoned with him and you blow your 10 energy, you can make a target sentenced 5, and then with his attack of 2, deal 7 damage, and usually that's a killing blow. Now, this has been nerfed. Initially, his Reckoning allowed for stealth. His ability, his new ability does not allow for stealth. So once you use it, you can't stealth. His Reckoning initially was like the final stealth, basically. Like you would attack, reckon, and then you'd have a stealth, and you'd have that 1 turn to set it up perfectly, and then after that, you've got to get your killing blow. When they changed his Reckoning, they took that away. So now, if you blow your Reckoning, you're not stealthed, you're open there, and sometimes that makes or breaks it. So the way he is played now, at least in terms of the way I'm playing him, the way other players I've spoke to, you don't go for his Reckoning. That's not a good idea to go for. You don't aim for it. If you're playing, it's like a last ditch, like, hey, I just need the extra health to stay alive 1 turn, basically. You're basically winning the game prior to using his Reckoning, or just not ever using it at all. It's not a difficult one to get reduced in cost because of the health value of the Raven Guard, and because of the way the Raven Guard play. You're not going to play with a ton of troops on the board anyways. You're usually going to play with 2, maybe 3 tops. Usually it's 1 or 2 on the board at any given time. But losing that final stealth makes a big difference, and I don't think that's what should have been changed. I disagree with that change. I think there were some other cards that could have been changed to help slow down some of the pace that players felt was unbalanced. Some of those changes were made and some of those were not. We'll see. I mean, the game is a living game, so things can continue to change, and we'll see how that goes. So Nikona Shiroken, he is the 4th ward. He's actually the newest one for the Raven Guard. His ability, he's kind of like your, I want to say poor man's Korax, but he kind of is. So he has the ability. He's also unstoppable, which is like Korax. So he's the 2nd. Currently, he's 2 of 2 in terms of the game of being an unstoppable warlord. So he is also able to fly over your frontline troops and get to whatever he wants to attack. For 2 energy, he can gain stealth until your next turn. That then changes. And you notice that he's got a siege ability, needs to be prepared by using it once without effect. The next time, his ability changes to 2 energy, deal 3 damage. So on 1 turn, he can stealth. On the next turn, he can deal 3 damage. And then you can rotate it as that goes. And that's okay. That's okay. It's like a combination of Korax meets, I don't want to say meets Abaddon, but in a way it kind of is. It's a 3 damage thing, but you can also use it on your opponent's Warlord. The trick with Nikona Shiroken is, because his stealth is not as reliable as Korax's, you either have to build your deck and play your deck with the concept of I'm only going to use stealth when I expect a vital strike to to occur on me, so I can avoid it, or I'm going to play it right out the gate so I can take advantage of that 3 damage whenever I want it, and then go from there. His ability is not one that you're going to use every turn. You're going to use it as best as you can time it. If you're using his ability every turn, you're probably giving up the potential, unless you don't have the cards to play that turn, you're probably giving up the potential to use it at a better timed moment, because if you're on an off turn when you don't have the ability to stealth, your opponent is going to pounce. And if you are on a turn where you have already used your 3 damage and your stealth, your opponent is going to drop a bunch of troops. So you have to keep that in mind. He's not a bad warlord. He's a 235, but you know, he's the poor man's Korax. So if you're trying to play and you're trying to amp up the stealth game, it's one way to go. He's not bad. Between Nev and Shuriken, I would go with Nev. I think Nev is more rewarding. I think Nev ties much more into the offensive capabilities of the Legion, but he's not bad at all. So Vincent 6. Vincent 6's ability has been changed a couple times. This last time is where he is currently. He starts with an extra card, which is nice. He is your starter warlord. If you're buying a Raven Guard starter pack, if you're paying money in for that, you'll get him. And then his ability currently is 1 energy. He gives +0/+2 to a friendly unit. Now, just a week ago, he had a different ability, and it made some people mad, and it was kind of a little bit too much, so it's been toned down a little bit. It's still good. His ability actually allows him to give +0/+2 to a friendly unit. That includes himself. And what that means, +0/+2, that can increase his health at like first turn of the game if you go first, from 2 to 32. Or 34 or 36. Now, it won't stay that long, obviously, because your opponent can attack you. Excuse me, I got something in my throat. I'll take a drink here. Boy, that's professional. Dr. Pepper on the air. With his maximum health being raised, any health that heals him would actually go back into that high health threshold, which is unusual. You might give that health boost to an infantry or troop card. You might not. It depends, but it can go across to anybody. It's not as good as it was a week ago, which is okay, because a week ago it was probably just a smidge too high. But it's not the greatest. It certainly doesn't go with anything that the Raven Guard do. If you're playing a Vincent 6 deck and you're building a Vincent 6 deck, you kind of want to avoid stealth and sentenced, which are the 2 mechanics that the Raven Guard utilize the most, and instead just kind of build yourself your standard offensive card pool, neutral card pool, mechanical card pool, frontline stuff, and utilize that ability to its fullest. So, Galavax Squad. Let's take a look at the cards here. They're starting to look at the troops. Stealth, sneak attack, 1/1/1/1/1. I've seen this in some event decks, and that's all I would put it in as event decks. It's a worthless card. It has 1 energy, 1 health. It seems like it's a great thing for first turn because it's stealth, but that low health and that low attack, there are not a lot of cards that can up the attack of your Raven Guard stuff, and it only takes a frag grenade or some sort of splash damage effect, and this guy's gone. So I would pass over that. Hit and Run is actually a pretty decent card. There are a lot of rally and flank or fast options in the Raven Guard build, in addition to the neutral card build. So being able to drop a card and then play Hit and Run and return it back to your hand, and then in addition give it a flank effect, are really nice. Flank, as it says up in the box, can act the turn it goes into play except to attack the warlord. To attack, if it has an ability that deals damage, you can still use that ability to deal damage to the enemy's warlord. Hit and run, one of the favorite things I like to use hit and run personally is I like to drop a Melgator to return an opponent's troop to their hand, and then play hit and run and give me back my Melgator. So then I can use Melgator a second time, so they know I've got it, and then they're kind of reluctant to put anything down, to try to force the Melgator move. Or you can drop some of these guys that you'll see with that rally and deal damage, and then pick them back up and then drop them again. Or, you can use your goldstones, and then hit and run them, pick them back up, and then use them to attack and kill off a troop. It's a good card. You got to look at the cards in your deck. You got to look at how many rally effects that you've got, because really rally is where you're going to want to take advantage of it on rally effects, and then utilize it. One of my first Korax decks that I used for the longest time just ran a single copy. Didn't need to use two because of the card draw potential of the Raven Guards is not too bad. It's not as strong as the Sons of Horus, but it's a fairly good pace in terms of drawing cards. And one was enough. One was enough to do the job. I think in some decks two might be better. It just depends on how much rally troops that you've got. So Shadow Walk, which we kind of looked at the artwork on this one here, but we're going to take a look at the ability. So it gives stealth and heal 2 to a friendly troop. And that stealth is permanent so long as you're not attacking with that troop. It is perfect to put on a Jukebox Starsight. It is perfect to put on an Apothecary that you'll see here, their Epic Apothecary, or any sort of support troop that you're not going to directly attack with, but you want to keep alive. There are some good ones in the neutral card pool. For instance, the Mortar Tosser. I don't think that's actually what it's called, but just to be accurate, the Helios Mortar Carrier. You could stealth that if you wanted to. But and it heals 2 in addition to that. It's perfect for some of the fast troops. Like you could drop a Goldstone, hit with the Goldstone, Shadow Walk them, so they're going to be available on your turn, and then they go back up to 3 health. Not a bad thing. So Ohlone Squad. Here we're talking about the rally damage. These guys are 2-drop, and they just deal 1 damage, and that's that's not bad at all. I don't want to look at that attachment just yet. We'll look at it. We'll look at it when the video's done, because I don't know what it's going to say. It's probably some not safe for work stuff, and not that I'm at work, but it's not the time or place. It deals 1 damage, so if you've got sentenced on a target, sentence 1, sentence 2, you can turn that 1 damage into 3 damage, into 2 damage, whatever the effect is. You've got a 2/2. They're okay. I think depending on your deck, like if you're playing a Nev deck, you may want to include some of these guys in there. If you're playing a Korax deck, probably not, because that 1 damage, there's some other cards that are just better in terms of the pacing, in my opinion. But it's a solid card. Curse of the Raven. Now I love Curse of the Raven. It's very basic. Deal 1 damage to all enemies, and then you draw a card. So it's like an improved frag grenades, because you're dealing damage and you're drawing the card. Move my head around. I don't want to look like a scrub. I probably look exactly like I did before, but whatever. It's more comfortable in my ears. It's a rare. If you see it in the shop and you don't have it for your deck, I would recommend adding it to your deck. It is a good card to have. It deals damage. It draws a card. If they're sentenced, that triggers your sentence. You've got sentenced 2. You play a 2 energy. Now you just did 3 damage to that sentence target, as well as 1 damage to all enemies, and you drew a card. And with the Ravens, the Raven Guard, you want to get to those cards that you need to set up your combo. That's why they've got some card drawing capabilities, because they are pseudo combo-ish. They need to have those cards in hand to operate. So it's a good card. I usually run 2 of them. It doesn't seem like it's great for the damage output, and that might change with the new legions that get introduced. We'll see how they affect the game, but currently 2 of these work perfectly. So no witnesses gives sentence 2 to an enemy troop. Now I've seen this in some event decks. It's only for a troop. It sticks on them, but that's usually only going to matter for the 1 turn because you're going to kill that troop anyways. But I don't like it. I mean, it's a common and it's okay. I wouldn't include it in a deck. There's better cards that do sentenced that are troops. There are better cards that do sentenced that are tactics that can not only affect the enemy, but troop, but also your opponent's warlord. And that's really where it counts, is affecting your opponent's warlord. So take that into account. If you have the choice between no witnesses and another card that offers sentenced, I'd pick the other card. But sentence 2 is not bad. I won't lie, it's not shabby. So Numa Squad. These guys, I think, have pretty much been the same since the get-go. They're 1 and they're 2 health, and I don't think that's changed. And for 1 energy, they give sentence to an enemy this turn, and they're stealthed. So you start out the game with these guys first turn, you've got yourself a guaranteed extra 1 damage to something at least for 3 turns. Once you hit that 4 energy mark, if your opponent has got an artillery strike, or if they've got a splash damage 2 energy effect or a random 2 energy effect, then they can deal with Numa Squad. But otherwise, they've got the potential to ramp up your damage. And if you're playing a Nev deck, you've got to have 2 of these in there. It's low energy, it's low health, obviously, but it's sentenced, it gives you card draw, it's a low cost, and it's stealth, and it just builds up what you need to operate later in the game. I don't put these in Korax. They're not a good idea for Korax. They're too slow for Korax. Korax has got to be a tight faster. Nev can operate better because he's drawing a few more cards with his ability. Scimitar Jetbikes, these guys, boy, there's some heat on this card. I mean, there's probably 3 cards that have got the most heat in the game, and they're all Raven Guard. At this point in time, actually, I should probably say a week ago. This point in time, that might change because the Iron Warriors are out, so all bets are off. But 3 energy, and it comes in, and it's got flank, and it's got sneak attack, and it's a 4 attack, and it's got 2 health. Sneak attack, that speaks for itself. I get to hit you, and you don't get to hit me. Flank, it can come into play, and it can do anything. It can attack, but it can't attack the warlord. So if your opponent has got a 4 health troop, and it's turn 3, turn 3, I don't think there's not that many 4 health troops. You drop your jet bikes, you kill that, and now you've got a 4 attack that your opponent has to deal with. It's a simple matter of dealing with a tactic or taking a face strike with the warlord, but they've got to deal with it. Otherwise, you're going to have another 4 to deal with on your next turn. If they've got a 5 health troop and you're playing Korax and it's turn 5, you can use this to drop it to 1 health and use your ability to stealth. And then the only thing that they can attack is your jet bikes. So it's a very good card to have. You don't just throw these out there. You wait. You wait until there's something that you need to address right away, like a jukebox, Starsight, or a critical frontline, or if you're playing a Korax deck, anything that will let you stealth that's got that 5 health. Otherwise, save them in your hand for when you need them, because they're usually only good for 1 turn, but they're a good thing to throw out there, and they're worth it. If you see them in the shop and you've only got 1, get yourself 2. If you don't have any, get yourself 1, unless you're not playing Raven Guard. I would probably say in terms of epics, there are 2 epics that you must have, and Scimitar Jetbikes is one of them. So Solaris Squad, I like these guys. These guys are unstoppable. They're 3 cost, and they've got a 2 health, and that's not much. That's not going to do much good. But really, it's their rally ability. With a sentence deck, or kind of any Raven Guard control deck, rally, deal 1 damage to a random enemy 2 times. So if your opponent's warlord is the only enemy out there, it's going to deal 1 damage and then 1 damage. And if you have happened to sentence that warlord, sentenced 2, deals 1 damage, then deals 2 damage, then deals 1 damage, then deals 2 damage. You just dealt 6 damage for 3 energy, give or take, depending on if you had to pay to sentence it. And then, in addition to that, you've got a troop on the board. And then, in addition to that, that troop is unstoppable. That's a pretty good card. I like it. I like these guys. As far as a common goes for a 3 cost, they're highly recommended. It depends on your deck. If you're playing a Sentence deck or you're playing a Korax deck, I would recommend Solari Squad. If you're playing a Nikona or a 6 deck, I would suggest looking elsewhere. I would suggest using probably the Torvac Squad as your 3 cost, or the Corvain Squad. Did I skip over a whole row? Good God, I skipped over a whole row. Numis and Corvadian Squad. That's what it was, man. Those guys, look at them. They look the same. They threw me. We're jumping ahead. All right, well, let's get back to the 2 drops. Solero Squad. Solero Bikes. Sneak attack and rally. If you control other troops, they gain fast, and there are 2/2. I like them. They're common, but I usually put 2 of them in a deck. Why? Because if I time it right, I'm getting a rally effect from 1 card. And then I play the Solero Bikes in addition to that, and I have the ability to do an additional 2 damage, whether that's to finish off a frontline troop or a warlord or a troop that's a threat. And then in addition to that, because they've got sneak attack, they're on the board, and my opponent has to deal with them some other way. Now, they're easily dealt with. Artillery strike deals with them. Some warlord offensive abilities deal with them. So they're not, 9 times out of 10, they're never going to last after the turn that they come in. But they do have to be addressed first, because they've got that sneak attack, and your opponent doesn't want that to stay on the board. So for a 2 cost, they're good. They're not a 2 cost that you throw out on turn 1. You throw them out like turn 4 or 5 later when you've got something else to combo them. But they're good to have. Plus, here's a little thing. If they're out there with another troop, then your opponent sometimes has to choose between, do I deal with the bikes or do I deal with that other troop? And it depends on the other troop. And it's a toss-up on what your mindset is going to be on what they're going to deal with. So sometimes that's a good thing too. Tactical Retreat. I don't like this card. I'd pass this up. Give stealth to your damaged troops. There are so many low health troops that you're going to include in your Raven Guard deck, in any of the decks, that it doesn't matter if they're damaged, they're going to be dead. So there's not going to be any survival to give them stealth to. If you're playing a 6 deck and they've got high health, they're most likely a frontline, and you don't want to give stealth to frontline. So I would pass on this. I've never seen this used. I've never thought of a reason to use it. Fury from Above. Now this card here, hang on a second. Gotta wet my whistle with the Dr. Pepper. This has been changed once, and I hope it stays that way. I actually like the way it was before, but people complained. This is the Raven Guard's direct damage card. Now, Sons of Horus have 4 energy, deal 4 damage, and draw a card with their, let's go right into it. For some reason, the name escapes me. Chariot of the Gods. For 4 energy, the Emperor's Children have deal 3 damage. Target dies, draw 2 cards. These guys here, they just have deal 3 damage to everything. And then they've got some fast troops that deal 4 damage. And then they've got some healing. And then you've got your Death Guard, who've got the deal 2, and if your target dies, deal 2. You've got your Iron Hands. You've got your deal 4 damage to everything, or deal 5 damage. You've got your Salamanders, who have got deal 2 and stun. And then you've got your Raven Guard, who for 3, as a common, have deal 1 damage to a random enemy 3 times. It used to be 4. Random. So for 3 energy, you could deal 1 damage randomly 4 different times. Now, for the arguers, sometimes, I'd say 80% of the time, like a higher percentage chance, about 50-50, you as the Raven Guard player, or just playing as an opponent who doesn't pack additional troops like they should, can control the fact that the only enemy on the table is their warlord, in which case it's your warlord 4 different times. And if that has a sentenced 1 or sentenced 2 effect on it, it's taking 1 damage plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2. So for 3 energy, you're conceivably doing 9 damage. However, or 12, it was 12 at the time. However, that's not a given, and the Raven Guard have some areas that they're not as strong in as others in terms of having high health troops and such. And unless you're playing like a Nev deck or a variant of the Korax deck, that's not really reliable. It's I don't know, the argument is there in terms of reducing it to a 3-time effect, but I don't think it was fair. I don't think it was warranted. I don't think it was truly as strong as people think. I think as time goes on, we might see it change again. It was combo based. That's the important thing. Otherwise, it's 3 for 3 or 3 for 4. It's a combo based card, which means the opponent has to play. You, the player, have to play 2 to 3 cards to properly maximize its potential, and that's what the Legion does. It combos. It's a combo Legion. You can say the same thing with some of the other card pool. There are just some cards that combo, and that's the reward of playing that combo and having it set up. And if your opponent can't interrupt that chain, that combo, then you get the full benefit. Currently, the squeaky wheel is getting oiled. I don't know, and I don't want to upset anybody who's been Fury from above. I know I've been Fury from above too. It happens, but I accept that as part of the game. And at the same time, if I can see it coming, and I can't do anything to stop it, and it happens, then it's what do you do? That's part of the game. If it's turn 7, and your opponent plays Pride of the Emperor, and deals 7 damage on you, and they get that card back in their hand, that's what they do. I'm not going to complain about it. That's the game. That's the way it works. So, yeah, turn 3 to turn 7 is a slightly different argument, but only slightly. Because normally Fury from Above is not played on turn 3. If your opponent's playing Fury from Above on turn 3, or just all by itself, if anything, that's a good sign that they probably don't have a very good hand, or they are trying to respond to whatever you've got on the table because they're running out of options. Normally, Fury from Above is played in conjunction with another card. If you're playing it solo, you're playing it wrong, or you're playing it desperate. So keep that in mind. Anyways, that's all I'm going to say about Fury from Above. Inescapable Cell. Now, the Raven Guard, this is the Raven Guard's Destroy card. The Raven Guard currently is the only Legion in the game, not counting the neutrals, because the neutrals aren't legions, they're forces. Let's just call them forces. Factions. They're factions. Inescapable Cell is the Raven Guard's Destroy a card. They don't have a straight Destroy card. They have the ability to do burst damage, but they don't have any card that says Destroy. And that's important, because they're the only ones currently that have something like that. And that's one of their weaknesses. They have low health, and they have the ability to outright destroy, which means their sentenced abilities are going to trigger Wraith or Argus Brond or any sort of rage ability, really. Anything that has shield is immune to that first part of their burst damage. Inescapable Cell returns an enemy to your opponent's hand. Now, initially, when it first came out, and for a few weeks, it was also increased that card's cost by 2. I think it should still be back in terms of increase that card's cost by 1 or by 2 to force it, but it still helps build a combo if you're looking to do a proper Fury from Above with a Sentence 2 on a Warlord, and you want to remove one random factor. If they've got like their Warlord and a troop on the table, you put Sentenced, you Inescapable Cell, and then you play Fury from Above, and you maximize profit for now 9 damage. But just going back into what I was kind of saying, and I know I said I wasn't going to say any more from it, but that's 3 cards. That's 3 cards, at least, to properly maximize 1 card. That should be the reward. That's the combo. That in of itself, 3 plus 3 plus anywhere between 1 to 2 energy, is turn 6, 5, or 6. That's your reward. I hope they reevaluate that. I like to see them put a 4th on it, back on here 3 times. I'm done. All right, Fury from Above. We've talked about it. I'm sorry. Pro Fury from Above. I think Fury from Above is cool. Don't hate me for it. Corvaden Squad. Now, these guys have been changed a couple times. I mean, they're okay. They're not bad. They're rare. They're 3 energy. They start out with stealth. And enemies damaged by this troop gain Sentence 1 this turn. And that's not bad. Like, they have to attack to do it. Most of the time, they're not going to survive the attack with a 3 health. Or if they do, they're going to just die on the next turn. But if they don't, or if you can manage to strike from the shadows, like you attack with them, and then you do Shadow Walk, then you've got them back on the board to utilize them again. So that's kind of nice. That's kind of neat. And the difference between them and Numa's squad is obviously number 1 in terms of energy and health, but these guys here have got an instant ability. They don't have to use energy to use their ability. On the downside is if there's a frontline troop out, then these guys are potentially worthless. And with 3 energy, they are also very susceptible to defensive satellites or a couple of random damage effects. So they're fragile. They're not bad. If you are building a Nev deck, yes, you want to include Corvaden Squad because they help further your sentenced capabilities. But they're not the end all. They're not something to build upon or rely upon. They're just an early boost for your burst. So we've actually talked about Scimitar Jetpacks. We've actually talked about Solari Squad. Because I accidentally jumped ahead. Let's look at Surprise Attack. Now on the surface, this seems good. Give +2/+0 to friendly units with stealth. And I think friendly troops, not units, because it won't affect your warlord. I think that's okay. But it's harder to do than you think. It's harder to execute than you think, because a lot of the stuff that has stealth either has an ability that you're going to trigger with energy, or they're low enough health that it's not going to matter, or you want to utilize them the following turn as soon as possible to maintain that board control. So at best, your surprise attack is only going to boost 1, maybe 2 units. It's not you're never going to get a table of 3+ stealth units unless you are playing like an event deck, which is like designed. I think there's a couple Shuriken decks that are just like all stealth, and if you go up against an opponent who doesn't have the anti-stealth, then yeah, you stand a greater chance of doing it. Or your opponent just doesn't know what they're doing, or you're playing a bot. That's the only time you're going to actually maximize this benefit. Otherwise, it's a one-time boost, and you attack with your guys, and because they've got low health, that's it. It's a one-turn thing. That your next turn, they're gone. So don't build a deck around this. It's not a good idea. And towards a fake squad, if you don't have goldstones, if you don't have them, then, and you're playing Raven Guard, then run these guys. They're not a 3/3, but they are 2/4, which has a slightly less damage output return in terms of, 6 versus 4, but they have the potential to stick around for 2 turns too, and that's good. And with the Raven Guard having the capability to add damage via sentenced effects, you can easily turn that 2 into a 3, or into a 4, or into a 5 for 3 energy. And they're unstoppable, and that's huge. That is huge. For Korax decks, they're good if you want to drop something to a 1 health to stealth, and then your opponent only has a troop on the board to attack. They're just a good option to have. They're a good common card. They're very solid. Sometimes it's a toss-up between them and another card, and then you have to take a look at your deck and seeing what do you feel better playing. But these guys are good cards. Good common. So Apothecary Coleman, good epic. And then they've got the Raven Guard have got some good epics. For 4 energy, he's a 3/6. And when a friendly troop dies, he draws a card. So that's a passive right off the bat. So if you've got some troops on the table, you play Apothecary Coleman, you attack with them, they die, you're getting cards back. In addition to that, for 1 energy, he's healing 3 to a friendly unit, which can include your Warlord. It can include himself. I love putting stealth on Apothecary Coleman. I love putting him down with like a couple jet bikes late game, because 9 times out of 10 your opponent's going to want to address those jet bikes first, and then that's going to get you 2 extra cards in your hand and buy you a turn to use Coleman ability on your Warlord. He's just a solid epic. There's nothing to say. I mean, there's high health, decent attack for offensive capabilities. Look at that chainsword. He's just like, it's in your face, man. And a great ability. The ability is just both his passive and his energy. Just an all-star card. If you've got the 1600, man, it's a tough call in terms of how I rank him. We'll take a look at the other cards, and I'll tell you, at this moment, at this given time in my life, at this moment, on this day, where I would rank the legendaries in terms of what is a must-buy first. I'll let you know. Now, Blindside. I haven't built anything utilizing Blindside. I've played some event decks that can utilize it. It's a great ability. Your units gain sneak attack this turn. All your units. That includes your Warlord. That's huge. That's huge. If you've got 3 units on the board and you play this, they all get sneak attack. Man, that's epic. And then your opponent has to respond to that after whatever damage you've done. For 4, that's pretty good. That's a good effect. It's harder to do than you think. I think a Blindside in a 6 deck, maybe even a Shuriken deck, is not a bad choice. It's not the best card to go in a Korax deck, and I don't know how it would work in a Nev deck, because your tactics, you want to be a little bit more offensive in that. It's a good tactic, but I haven't found a place for it, so has its moments. Deliverance. Now, Deliverance, I will say right now, is probably the lowest of the legendaries for the Raven Guard. If you see it in the shop and you're needing other legendary cards, whether for Raven Guard or another faction, don't bother. Draw 3 cards, give +1/+1 to any troop drawn which has stealth. That's it. I don't like it. I don't like it because, number 1, it's contingent upon you building a deck that's heavy with stealth cards, which is harder to do than you think with them to work properly and synergize together. Number 2, the boost is okay, but it's only on up to 3, and if you draw 3 cards and none of them are troops, then you just paid 4 to draw 3. And finally, it doesn't put them into play. Like, if it drew 3 cards and it put any troop in play with stealth into play with +1/+1, I would say this is an awesome card. Still would have a niche, still would have to have a deck for it, but it doesn't have that. Instead, it just is like, draw 3 cards. All right. Well, there's plenty of other card draw options in this Legion's card pool. Give +1/+1. which has to an enemy with has stealth. Well, if they've got stealth, that doesn't do much, number one, because they've got low health. Number two, I'm probably not going to use them for attacking because they've got passive abilities I want to use. And number three, I have to then pay energy to put them into play. It has 3 strikes against it, in my opinion. So, Cade Squad. Now, this is common. 4 energy, 5/3, unstoppable. Not bad, not bad if you're starting out your Raven Guard card pool. There are better 4 energy drops as time goes on. This is probably better from some of the neutral 4 energy drops, but for the Raven Guard, there are definitely some better ones. But it's not terrible. I'm not crapping on it. It's decent. I like the artwork too. Caitlyn Squad is a perfect example of one that is better. So instead of a 5/3, it's a 3/5, but that's okay because its ability is a 1 energy sentence 2 to an enemy this turn, and that is nice. You put a Caitlyn Squad on the table, that is your target that your opponent's going to go for. They might be able to destroy it, they might not. If they don't, for 1 energy, you just ramped up damage on your next turn. Whether that's ramping it up and then playing a damage effect or attacking or whatever the case may be, you don't need to attack with these guys. You need to use their ability for sentenced. If you're playing a Nev deck, you need these guys in your Nev deck. You can build a very rare heavy and non-legendary heavy Nev deck. If you're playing a Korax deck, it's a little bit more epic and legendary, but just the same, Caitlyn Squad is a good card to have. I like Caitlyn Squad. Or Dare Squad is another card I like. It's unstoppable. It's a 3/3. Okay, that's low health, low attack. It's easily disposed of, but its rallies deal 2 damage. So number one, you've got a 2 damage effect, which, as we've discussed in some of the other cards in the other legions, 2 damage to 3 damage is your prime kill a troop card damage range. But if you combine it with the sentenced effects in the Legion, you can easily turn that 2 into 4. And then for 4 energy, you're getting 4 damage and you're getting a troop on the board. And not only are you getting a 3/3 troop on the board, it's an unstoppable troop on the board. And if you happen to have played Hit and Run, not only are you picking that back up into your hand and using that effect a second time, but then you've got a 3/3 flank, which is just a smidge lower than your gold stones. I love gold stones. And I love Odera Squad. I love them so much. I like them. They're good. Raven's Talons. Definitely must have. Definitely. This upgrade ability speaks for itself. Your Warlord gains sneak attack. If you can get this on your Warlord turn 4, turn 5, for the rest of the game, he has sneak attack, and that's a huge benefit. That's awesome. That almost mitigates the extra damage output that Angron has. Actually, it kind of does. It kind of turns it up a notch. That for Korax, that means that he's unstoppable, and he's got sneak attack. For same goes for Shuriken. Unstoppable, 2 damage. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what you hide behind. I get attack back, and you don't get to attack me, and I get 2 damage. It's a great tactic. It's a legendary, but man, it's a tough call where I place this one. But it is a good card to have. Victorous Aut Mortis. So I've seen this in some event decks. Your troops gain backlash, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. It's not bad. It's okay. Also, shout out to Eutropius. Look at that photo bomb in this card. Yeah, look at that guy. He's an Iron Hands. You don't see him right down there in the lower right-hand corner. You can't see my finger, but I'm pointing right at his face. Photo bomb in this card. Anyways, that's okay. You got to build your deck around it, and it's for its cost. And for the fact that most of the Raven Guard don't play with a lot of troops on the table, it's not really going to see much play outside of events. It is in event decks. It's not in every event deck, but I wouldn't rely on it. Wrong place. For whom the bell tolls. You know, this card kind of like sparked that unconscious like vibe where like, oh, the Raven Guard are kind of like, they're kind of like emo and heavy metal, and Korax does kind of remind me of some of the guys who listened to Metallica when I was in high school. You're right. And then I put the two and two together, and that's why we had the opening music that we had at this video. The song just rings in my head every time I play Raven Guard to begin with, but then especially when I play this card, because then I just put "Time marches on, for whom the bell tolls," and then I just destroy them. Because for 5 energy, you're giving Sentence 2 to an enemy this turn. This is the card that can do it to your opponent's Warlord. You save this for a turn 8 or turn 9, and you drop this on your opponent's Warlord, and you finish off whatever killing strike you are. It doesn't matter what they're hiding behind. It doesn't matter what they've got on the table. You've just ramped up all of your damage against their Warlord by an additional 2. So I use this, I use a Mordathan, I use Korax, and then between the two of them, I've just done for 5, 7 energy, 8, I've done 12 for 7 energy. It's a combo. That's utilizing this card plus 1 card plus 1 card. So that's 3 card combo for 12. Again, a 3 card combo for 12, or a 3 card combo for what used to be 12. I'm just saying. I'm just saying it takes combos. This is a combo legion. It's combo. You can't see my hand because I'm moving so fast. It's not a 2 of. I think it's a 1 of in most decks. I think with Raven Guard, because of the way they can card draw, I think you only need 1. But when you use it and you use it right, you seal the deal. Guerrilla Warfare has changed slightly. It used to be 4 energy. It is now 5 energy, and it used to be deal 2 damage to an enemy and 1 to adjacent units, and now it is just straight 2 to an enemy and adjacent units. So it's kind of like a amped up artillery strike. So artillery strike is 4 energy, and it deals 2 damage to random 3. Now for 1 extra energy, it's not random. I'm removing the random part of it, and I'm drawing a card. That's not a bad trade-off. If I have to choose between the two, I'll probably pick Guerrilla Warfare. I'll probably pick Guerrilla Warfare over Artillery Strike for the Raven Guard, because that card draw is nice. But with it being a 5 energy, I don't know if I would go for 2 of it in a deck anymore. I used to run with 2 of it when it was 4 and its other effect. That's not a terrible thing to do now, but it's a good card. It is a good card. If you have the choice between Defensive Satellites and Artillery Strike and Guerrilla Warfare, I would suggest this over the other 2, for the simple fact that it draws you a card. And for the Raven Guard, you need those cards in hand to combo. Javelin Speeder. This is probably card number 2 that gets a lot of heat from, when I say heat, that's a term that implies hatred, in terms salt, in terms complaints, in terms anger, responses. It's a 5 energy, 6/4, flank, rally, all enemies lose stealth. So this is the Legion's answer to stealth. It's its answer to its own self, basically, for 5 energy. And then it has a 6 attack output. That's pretty good. Turn 5 or turn 6, that 6 attack can deal with just about anything that's on the board, aside from the Warlord, obviously. Now, the 4 health means it's probably not going to survive what it's going up against, or your opponent will only have to deal 1 damage to it to finish it off on its next turn, but it did its job. It was a problem a little bit with 6 before he was nerfed, because they could drop a javelin speeder and then increase that health to 6, and that's a little bit too much. So it's been toned down. His ability has been toned down, but this effect has not. But a lot of people complain because they think that this is the best answer to stealth in the game, and that's not true. If you look back at some of my card-by-card abilities reviews, I think there are a variety of cards that answer stealth, whether it's breaking stealth or dealing damage or getting past stealth or just being able to just straight outright destroy something regardless of whether it's stealthed or not, that costs less than this. That's 5 is, this is the most expensive answer to stealth, but this is certainly not the best answer to stealth. Now, yes, all enemies lose stealth. Okay, well, if you're playing Raven Guard, there's usually only 1 or 2 that have stealth, so that's all that matters. But there is a, let's just go back to it. There's a 1 energy effect that does the exact same thing. And then that saves me 4 extra energy to do whatever I want with, if I was using it at the same turn. 1 cost. The fact that it has flank and the fact that it is a 6 isn't breaking. It is not groundbreaking. It balances out with the cost, sure, but that doesn't do much. If you were playing as a Raven Guard, this is what you use. Yes, this is what you use. But if you're not, and you really are worried about stealth, you use the other cards that exist in the game, the other neutrals or the other cards within the Legion to answer to stealth, and you'll get by just fine because your Legion plays differently. Your ability to put cards and troops on the table. If you break stealth and you've got 3 other troops on the table, those are the ones that you use to kill whatever it is that was stealthed. Or you use your Warlord's ability. Or you use a outflank or whatever it is in hand if it's something super important. And all of those things cost more or equal to the javelin speaker, depending on how many of your cards are involved in whatever it is that you're dealing with. So it is a good answer to stealth. It is the Raven Guard's answer to stealth, but it is the most expensive answer to stealth. It is not the end all that people feel that it is. Now, if you have Raven Guard, if you're playing Raven Guard, you need to have 2 of these. You do, because it ties into flank, it ties into breaking stealth. It's a good damage output, and in your turn 5 up in the Raven Guard for most of the decks, that's when your damage needs to go from 1s and 2s with increases dealt by sentenced effects into your highs 4s and 6s. That's where you need to start turning up the damage, and that's what these guys do. It's nighttime. Lyso Squad. Now these guys are actually, they're not the best stealth squad for the Raven Guard. There's a couple more that still top out of these guys, but they're not bad at all. 5/4 unstoppable, and they have stealth. That's pretty nice, man. You throw these out there late game, especially if it's like Korax and you've stealthed yourself and then you've dropped these guys. Now your opponent knows that they can't touch him, and they've got 5 coming to him to their face, plus Korax. These are good ones to have. Good ones to have. Not a bad turnaround. They're not for every deck, and as time goes on, I think that they would get replaced. Like if you had to choose between Lyso Squad and Javelin Speeder, I would recommend the Lyso Squad. I'm sorry, I would recommend the Javelin Speeder. I would almost say why not both, but sometimes that's just not an option. Muratis Squad, I don't like as much as I do like the other 2 that I've mentioned. I like the artwork, and they are unstoppable, and they're a 6/4, but their rally is not as effective as it seems. So their rally is deal 1 damage to all sentenced enemies, and that sounds good. I've never played a turn where I've had more than 1 enemy sentenced. So if I'm playing a sentenced effect and then I'm playing this guy, I'm only dealing 1 extra damage to that 1 unit. In addition to that, He has a 5 cost and sentenced abilities for the most part. Let me just adjust my camera. Sentenced abilities cost energy. So to combo him with another ability, I have to spend energy. He's not a very useful thing. And when he comes in, he's not stealth. He is unstoppable, and that's good. I would pass over him. I would definitely take the speeder over Mortis squad. Just not so good. Not terrible. I mean, he's not terrible, but his ability reads really good. It's not as good as it seems. Now, Umbra Secundus, I wish I had 2 of these. This is a great tactic. This is a great tactic. And now it seems high for its cost. It really isn't. Deal 2 damage for 5. That is high. But the next Raven Guard troop you play gains fast. And that's the game breaker. That's it. You play this on a turn 7 or turn 8. You deal 2 damage. You use the extra energy, let's say your Corax to stealth or your Nev to do something off and control the board. And then the next turn you drop Cade's Nex and you win the game. Because he comes out and he's a 9 and he's fast. And his ability does 11 damage, and then your Warlord pops off another 4 damage. That's 15 damage. Okay. Game. Good card. If you see this, I waited. It took me a while for this to show back up in the shop. That's the only way I got this one. And I picked it up, and I didn't have enough for 2, or I would have gone for 2. Good card. This is probably definitely one of the top 3 must-owned epics for the Raven Guard. Bane Squad is nice. Low health, high cost, but look at their ability. They're stealthed, they come in stealth, and for 2 they deal 5 damage, and then they lose stealth. So this is one of the first, not the only I'm sure we'll see in the game, but one of the first that when they use their ability, they actually lose stealth, because normally if they have an ability and they use it, it doesn't break stealth, but it's pretty, I mean, they're coming out of the shadows and just wailing in with some heavy bolter fires. You can't be stealthy with heavy bolters. That doesn't work. Come on. We can hear those things. But it's interesting to note that if they survive, they can use that ability again. It doesn't matter if they're stealth or not. I mean, they've lost stealth at that point in time. So for another 2, they can deal 5 more damage. They're not bad. I mean, if you had 7 energy and you played Umbra Secundus, you could drop these guys in and deal 5 damage on the turn they come in. That's possible too. So keep that in mind. Or if you pop them off, then you deal 5 damage, and then you hidden run them, and then you bring them back into play. Even though they've got flank and not fast, they can still use that ability, and then you use that ability and you do the 5 damage. So they're not bad. It depends on what you have in your card pool and how you use them. If you want to include 1 or 2 of them in a deck, you got to take a look at that. You got to really analyze it and decide, are there better choices or are there not. They're not terrible. They're not terrible, but they're not for everything. Dravian Clade. I think we're going to see some more Dravian Clade pop up here as the game progresses. We're seeing a lot of vehicles. I can't say a lot. We're seeing a decent amount of vehicles enter the gameplay with the Iron Warriors now in the game. Enemy vehicle troops have sentence 3. Now for his stats, a 6 for a 6/7, that's pretty good. Some crazy artwork, by the way. Look at those bionics. That guy's seen some wear, man. I wouldn't want to be in the shape he's in. Anyways, decent ability, but most of the games that you're playing with the Raven Guard, you're not gonna need and or want him. So I would probably place him just 1 notch above Deliverance in terms of useful legendary. Mordathan is probably the #1 epic for the Raven Guards. You need to have 2 of these guys. Doesn't matter who you're building. If you're building as 6, or if you're building it as Nikona, or you're building as Korax or Nev. 2 of these guys. Now, this ability has been changed. It used to cost 1 energy. It now costs 2, and it's still just as good. They are stealthed. Using their ability does not break stealthed. Number 2, they deal 6 damage to a sentenced unit, or they give it sentence 2. So they're going to apply damage, or they're going to help you ramp damage. And they've got high enough health to last 1 to 2 random damage effects. Okay, for 6, I wouldn't expect any less. Must buy Epic if you're looking to improve your Raven Guard and you don't have these guys. You see them in the shop, pick them up. Keld Squad. Now, I'd like to build something with Keld Squad. Their ability is interesting. First off, their stats are not bad. 5 and a 6 for a 6 cost, and adjacent units have +1/+0, which includes your Warlord. And if your Warlord has got the Raven's Talon on it, he's a 3/0 sneak attack. I like that concept. I like that ability. They're not stealth. They're a little bit more direct in your face, kind of like his picture is indicating. He's like getting up in your face with that bolter. But I don't know how it plays with the rest of the Raven Guard currently. I mean, if you drop these guys with the Solero Bike Squad next to them, that Solero Bike Squad is a 3 sneak attack. So I think there's a ways to use them. I don't know if they work as well as the other stuff, but they're not bad. Deliverers. I ran with the Deliverers for a little bit here when I first started playing Raven Guard. And they are the only, make sure before I go one step further, they are one of 2 troops that have frontline for the Raven Guard. Pretty beefy frontline. It's a 7/7, but he only has frontline if you control no other troops, and that's important. That's important because, like, for instance, if you're playing Korax, normally you're not going to have a whole lot of troops, number 1. So he's the only one that's going to be out there. And then he's also going to limit what you can play. Your Solero Bikes, you can't play with the Deliverers because it breaks his front line. Any of your rally effect guys will break the front line. It's nice, it's beefy, it's not great, but it's contingent upon something. So as time goes on, you replace him. You put him in with something else. He's a high damage card, he's a high output card, but he's contingent. Shadow Wardens are not bad. They have stealth, and if your warlord is attacked, they lose stealth and they deal 5 damage to the attacker. And the first time that happens to you, you get surprised. You're like, whoa, I forgot about that. Oh shoot. But then their stealth is broken. And sometimes what I like to do to deal with these guys is bait them out with like a 1 attack, one attack troop guy that has got 1 health. They're going to still break the stealth, and then I can use a Melgator to return to hand, or a destroy card, or a damage card, or whatever it is that I want to deal with these guys. 7/6 stealth is nothing to laugh at, but these guys are able to be dealt with just by attacking your opponent's warlord. It seems counterproductive, but it really isn't. It's actually the best way to deal with them. They're not terrible, but they're not the end all. They're not top notch. Ancient Krasen. No, it's probably one of the few cards that I've actually been able to say here, just don't bother. Don't bother. The backlash seems nice. Deal 2 damage to all enemies, but for the cost, for the fact that it's a vehicle, for the 6/7, it quickly replace this card. You'll feel better. Replace it with Dark Fury. There you go. The perfect card to replace it with. Boy, this guy can end games. He can help end games super fast. He's stealthed when he comes into play. He has 6 health. He has 8 attack. He's unstoppable. And then, just to tick it up a notch, for 1 energy, he can deal 7 damage, and he goes back up to your hand. So let's just say you put him out on turn 8, and you don't have enough to utilize him the best way possible, or you don't want to break his stealth. For turn 9, you can use his ability deal 7 damage instead of 8, and then put him back on the table. That's going to lock you the game. Unless they can break his stealth right away, it's going to lock you the game. If they can't break his stealth right away and they've got less than 10 health, that's going to win you the game. Dark Fury, a 1 to 2 of in your decks. These guys are great. These guys are good. They're not as good as Moore, because Moore is a lower cost and he has just a solid capability, but these guys are solid. Solid. Cade's next is your closer. He is the guy that comes out, pretty much puts the cap on the game right there. Stealth, and he is a 9 for 9/8. Solid stats, and right off the bat, he puts Sentence 2 on your enemy warlord, and that doesn't go away. That's not contingent at the end of the turn. It goes into effect on their turn too. So if you put that on to Angron, and there's not too many games that you get to play Cade's next against Angron, because games against Angron don't usually go to turn 10 or up. But you play Cade's next, they've got Sentence 2 on their turn and your turn, and every time they attack, they're going to add 2 damage to it. Normally, you throw Cade's out, and then you attack with 1 or 2 other troops that you've got on the table, and you win the game. Or you drop Cade's out, and you're stealthed, or you have enough health to survive whatever it is that they're throwing at you, and then the next turn, you win the game. Or, the favorite, any Raven Guard player will tell you, you play Umbra Secundus, and then you don't have another Raven Guard turn to play until turn 9, and you drop Cade's, and you win the game. Cade's is your closer. He is your vengeful spirit. He is your Pride of the Emperor. He is your end game effect, basically, for the Raven Guard. Valraven. I like Valraven's ability, and it is the only Raven Guard troop that is frontline that is not contingent upon anything else. But its cost is terrible. And I think I've only seen it one time properly used in an event deck. And I think they did Valraven, they did Umbra Secundus, and then they pumped out Valraven and dealt the 8 damage. And that'll work. That'll work if it wins you the game, but it's not something to build in a deck. It's not something to properly put in a deck. Just ignore this card. Don't seek it. Don't pack it. There's better options. Not terrible, but it's not great. So let's take a quick look in terms of ranking. Let's rank the warlords here. First off the bat, I think Korax is probably number 1. Nev is number 2. And then it's a tough call between 6 and Shuriken. I'd probably put Shuriken above 6 at this point in time. For your legendaries, I would put Nex. Cade's Nex is your number 1. And then it is a close call between Raven's Talons and Apothecary as your number 2. And then for your bottom rung, Deliverance and Dravian Clade. So try to keep that in mind if you're looking to expand your card pool for the Raven Guard. They are really super fun Legion to play. They feel like as you're playing them that they're rewarding you for playing smart. They're not as in your face as the world leaders, but they definitely reward smart play. They make you feel like you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, if you don't know what you're doing, then you're gonna flounder a little bit. So. That if you've gotten this far and you've gotten some Raven Guard cards, hopefully you know what you're doing. They're really good. They're really good Legion. They're a loyalist Legion. They play like they feel like they should in the game. Really enjoy these guys, and I hope that they continue to stay where they're at. They're not top tier. They're up there. They're either lower top tier or like second tier in terms of where they're at, and that depends on how we're counting the warlords, because Korax is definitely up there. Nev is lower, and then where they fall in between with everybody else is kind of how that determines. So, and we'll do something maybe to talk about as the game goes on, where every Legion is currently ranking. I don't know, that might be a lot of time to analyze. I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, the Raven Guard. Super fun, super good. I hope some of these tips come to you that are useful. You might put them together in terms of how to utilize them better, or what you need to make your deck one extra, what to save your gems for. There are some good epics, don't get me wrong, but there are some that are not worthwhile as much as others, and that's kind of the important thing. When every little bit of your gems costs count, make the most of it. Anyways, that's it for me. That's what I'm talking about, the Raven Guard card by card. I'm going to hold off on an Iron Warriors card by card until we see the first week or two where they do some card balancing, because things are going to change with them. Having some good time playing with them. They're really interesting, but I don't expect it to stay that way forever. So look for some deck profiles coming up. Look for some other little tips and tricks. I might go back and revise one of the decks that I discussed previously, and I might even try something in terms of doing like a deck suggestion. You know, like somebody tell me what cards you've got, and I'll build a deck with it. I don't know. I don't know if that'll be beneficial, if that'll really help anybody, or if that'll just help one person. But whatever helps keep people playing, keep people interested in the game, keep the community. I think the Ironware stuff is already looking good, and it's got some fresh blood in there, and it's got people thinking outside the box. So anyways, that's it. That's where we're going to wrap it up. Keep playing Legions, everybody, and have a good night, have a good weekend, and be safe.